Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes Recap.
We're doing Game of Thrones, Episode 3 of Season 6. It's titled Oathbreaker.
And I am Albert Berg, and as always, I am joined by Tony Southcott. And all of a sudden, I've just started talking in a southern accent because my words got away from me. They started being said in a weird way. We need to have some people in the Westeros area talking with the southern accent.
I'm sure that's somewhere.
That would be good.
Maybe in, like, the fishy areas or something.
I mean, realistically, this is just gonna right off into a tangent, but like every fantasy person always has like this sort of British accent, sort of highfalutin. Like, why can't we have some people that sound like they're from West Virginia, son? They are in a world that does not exist. They probably don't actually speak English.
And you know that in like Flea Bottom and everything, there'd probably be some pretty gnarled accents.
Yeah, you almost get it with Gilly a little bit. She has kind of a something like that going on.
But the longer she's around Sam, like she ends up getting her language cleaned up. And they actually talk about that a little bit on this episode.
Yes. But that's not where we're starting, Tony.
Nope.
We're starting with Jon Snow is back to life. It's official. They weren't pranking us or anything. He's back. Everybody's freaked out. I really love that they open this episode on the reaction shot from Davos.
Yeah.
Like Davos just looking at him like, it actually worked. Can't believe it actually worked. Which is great. And then what's her face as well, Melisandre is also like, it worked. And it really was great that her like first thing she wanted to know was, all right, what's the afterlife like? Dude, spill the beans. Did you go to heaven? Which heaven did you go to?
I did.
Which one of the gods are real?
I was just she just wants some sort of affirmation of her faith, even though she just resurrected a dude.
Yeah, but I get what she's going for because she didn't have any faith, right? Like when she did that, she was just going through the motions. She was just saying the words. And so to her, I think there's still a question of, okay, where is this magic coming from now?
Yeah, it definitely is it's definitely a problem for her with that. But I think I would probably ask the same question in all honesty. And it's kind of a scary answer when he's like, there was absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and so she, I think, takes it as maybe the Lord of Light didn't let him go anywhere because he knew what was going to happen. But it does bring into question the theology of the Game of Thrones world, where we know that there is magic. We know that there is a supernatural world. And we know that there are multiple different deities, right? We have the tree gods. We talked about this last week. We have the seven, and now we have the Lord of Light. And all of these people, we haven't really seen the seven do much, although the people in the House of Black and White worship the god of death, and he seems to have some good magic on his side. So possibly the other ones of the seven have some stuff on their side too, but definitely we've seen the Lord of Light have some effect. So how real are these gods and how exclusive are they? Are they different aspects of the same thing? It's an interesting question, and I don't know if it's one that the Game of Thrones really wants to explore deeply, but it's something that makes me interested.
Yeah, and having read the books, have you seen anything that would suggest it's all the same, or that even the seven really have outright powers in the same way that Lord of Light seems to?
I mean, there are all different types of, just like in our world, people will say, well, most religions are worshiping a different aspect of God, and some people will say God doesn't exist, and some people say my God's the only one. It doesn't give exact credence to any one particular philosophy, but that idea that they're all the same is one that people bring up.
Interesting. We also come into that scene, actually it's a little bit later whenever he goes and he has to take care of some people.
Yes, that's the end. I mean, it's not a huge spoiler, but it's something that I think people were really... I was not... You know what, let's do get into that, because I was not aware that people hated Ollie as much as they hated Ollie.
Yeah, there's a lot of Ollie hate that I had seen kind of on the periphery, but as soon as all this happened, like I got like 3 text messages from different people that were just like, oh, fuck yeah, fuck Ollie.
Wow, that's interesting to me. I always thought he was a really interesting character in... I mean, he was on Jon Snow's... Yes, was. He was on Jon Snow's side for such a long time, and, that moment when he kills redheaded chick, dagnabbit, What's her name?
I know exactly who you're talking about because she always tells Jon Snow he knows nothing.
Yes.
Ygritte? Something
Ygritte,
like...
thank you.
Is it
I
Ygritte?
believe you're correct. You know what? I have no idea. But when he kills her, that was a great moment. It wasn't like, man, look at this little douchebag kid. Unless you're completely a sociopath and you don't understand that, like, from his perspective, he's doing the right thing. Like, he's finally got the balls to kill somebody, and it's great.
Yeah,
and
especially because
like,
they did murder his entire family in front of him and possibly ate them, too.
Right, and their wildlings are attacking. It's not like it's cool for Jon Snow to just be fraternizing with her while the wildlings are attacking the fort. You know, he's doing the right thing in that moment, and arguably he's doing the right thing, at least from his perspective. And there's a lot of that in this episode of, you know, from my point of view, from your point of view, which Varys really spells out a little bit later. But from his perspective, he's doing the right thing when he kills Jon.
Yeah, and they even explained that in that episode that he killed him, like, probably about 15 minutes in. They're like, oh, this is what you have to do sometimes.
So it's interesting to me that he just gets as much hate as he does. I don't think he's a hateable figure. I think he is sort of a mirror of Jon Snow. I think that here's a character who's trying to do what he thinks is right, who's trying to, you know, leave his mark in the world in the right way. And he's the only guy who doesn't, it's interesting to me, he was the only person who didn't say anything. That he wasn't like,
Yeah,
I was expecting to go to him and have him beg for his life.
I thought Jon might actually have mercy on him. Like, maybe it's just because I've never seen a kid, like, he's probably, like 10 to 13, somewhere in that range, get hung on a TV show before. Maybe I expected them to pull that.
There was a moment there at that end where I was like, Jon's going to cut him down. Like, he has the sword, they're hanging, he cuts the rope to drop him, but then I was thinking maybe he spares them.
At least spares one of them, like, at least spares Ollie. Like, I didn't think that they were going to go through with that, but then I sometimes forget what show we're watching.
Well, I do wonder, the reason, not because I didn't think Game of Thrones would go through with it, but part of me was like, Jon Snow has been on this, I'm going to do what I think is the right thing kick for so long. His dad has trained him up to do the right thing every time, and it's not gone well for him.
Yeah, even some of the stuff where it's like the person who lays down the sentence should do the execution, all these other different things, just, it's not a world that follows Eddard Stark's philosophies anymore.
Well, I don't know that it ever was a world that followed the philosophies. He was just saying that this is how you act even when it's not easy or it's not fun. But I think Jon has gotten to the point where maybe I thought maybe he was willing to say, you know what? I don't care that it's the right thing. I don't care that this is justice. I don't want to kill these people. I don't know. I understand that he almost had no other choice.
Well, he was almost psyching himself up for it. Whenever they went to ask him or told him it was time to go and hang those people, he was holding on to the vest where he had been stabbed, like he was staring at it, like he needed reassurance that it was the right thing to do.
And I'm still not convinced that it was. I mean, this is the whole point of, going back to the idea of what happens after you die, which gods are right. Again, there's the question of who is right, who is doing the right thing, and Jon has gotten to the point where he's not sure he's doing the right thing.
Exactly. And right after that, you see him give up the cloak of the Lord Commander and walks out of there. He says his watch is over.
Yes, which I knew, like 90% was like, that's gotta happen, because the oath so explicitly states once you're dead, you're on your watch until you're dead, and he died. The moment, even in that season finale, I didn't tweet this because I didn't want to be a douchebag who spoils everything, but when I saw the season finale, I wanted to tweet out, and now his watch has ended. Because regardless of whether he comes back, like, that's the end of his watch, and he died, so the rules say he can leave.
Yeah. And that's why the episode is called Oathbreaker.
He did not break his oath, though. Not
true.
In this case. But moving on to someone who does break his oath, sort of oath-ish. We are on with Sam and Gilly in the ship, with Sam being all sick, and Gilly's trying to comfort him, and Sam kind of breaks the news to her that he's not actually going to take her to Old Town.
Yeah, he's taking her to his family's home.
Which I first of all, I don't think that's something that happens in the books. This is one of those things that is still kind of ongoing in the books, and I believe he does end up in Old Town with her. Although it's been so long since I read book 4, and book 4 was so long and kind of not great that I don't exactly remember. But I'm really excited to see him interact with his family as Sam the Slayer now, but still also kind of a coward.
And I'm sure the cowardice is brought out even more with his family.
Well, right, and his dad casts such a shadow over him and really clearly has influenced his life with such a negative way that, I mean, just to send your kid off to the watch, just be like, you know what, you'll do better there. Don't go off. It's
yeah,
like,
you'll do better whenever you die because I don't think you're going to survive a year.
Just yes. So I'm interested to see that, but I was also interested in how she's. I mean, in the world of Game of Thrones, especially, like, to have someone as understanding and forgiving as Gilly, where she doesn't pitch a fit, she doesn't have some kind of breakdown where she's like, "You said you were going to be with me the whole time." Because, well, if that's what you think is right and the best, then let's go. You know, I'll do what you think is best, and I don't know why I'm surprised by that, but I am surprised by that. I thought that they would go somewhere else, you know, give it a little bit more. Like more of a conflict there, and it's really interesting that the conflict is sort of within Sam more than external. I think he's questioning in himself whether this is the right thing, but she trusts him almost implicitly. Like she does completely putting herself in his hands, and he doesn't necessarily know if it's the right move.
Well, she trusts him enough that she actually calls him like the father of her child. He's obviously not the actual father, since that was a rape baby, but. Like, it's a little bit different, like, putting that out there. I mean, that's even breaking an oath with the Night's Watch because he's sort of setting up a family.
Yeah, this one is definitely one where the title, and maybe we're just dumb from the titles of the previous one, but, like, this one really, I think the title kind of spans across many of the different storylines and can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. The way I interpreted it was more that he was breaking his promise to her to take her along. But he's breaking his oath to the Night Watch, although he's still kind of working under Jon's command, like Jon told him to go. So that's
a little ambiguous, yeah.
But that moving on from that, we get something that I think Game of Thrones fans have been like itching for, basically since R plus L equals J was a thing. We talked about it last episode, and again, sort of possible predictive spoilers for those of you who don't know this theory. I fast forward several minutes and hopefully we'll be done talking about it, but if you don't want to hear any of it, but we see Ned Stark, a young Ned Stark, coming to the Tower of Joy where Lyanna is, and being met outside by the guards set there by Rhaegar Targaryen, and we get sort of a little exposition that tells us that the War of the Trident is over, that Rhaegar's dead, and these guys are there guarding what we know it's Lyanna. I don't know if they explicitly say that, but that's why he's there. He's there to rescue his sister, with like 6 or 7 guys at his side
at least, and he comes across, who is it, like the Flower Knight or something?
I don't
Knight
think
of the Flowers? I can't remember.
The name of the character who he fights, I've forgotten, but he is renowned in sort of the history of Game of Thrones as being one of the best fighters in all of the the series, and to see that played out in this is a really well choreographed scene. It's not just empty fight. I mean, the fighting is great, but to see. It serves a purpose, right? It shows Bran, his dad, because Bran is watching this through his time goggles or whatever. He's going back, looking back and seeing what has happened. So it's his perspective, seeing his dad as a young guy, and then from the story perspective, him seeing that not everything that he's been told is the truth.
Yeah, like just because he ends up seeing someone backstab to save his dad's life, because his dad was definitely not going to win that fight. I just pulled up the names. It's guarded by 3 members of the Kingsguard: Sir Arthur Dane, Sir Oswell Went, and Lord Commander Gerald Hightower.
And Arthur Dane is the guy who is the last one standing, and he's the guy who's the more renowned fighter.
Sword
And
of the Morning is what he's called.
yes, what an awesome name!
That
I'm
is
almost sad that he's
awesome.
not in more of this. Now, like having seen him go down, like in such.
Well, they're talking about making a prequel series, so I bet you would see him in that.
I that would be interesting to see. I wonder if they'll stick with this casting, if we'll see more of young Ned Stark in Bran's flashbacks. But regardless, that fight really, did a lot of work narratively, and we're seeing that, history as it has been told is not necessarily the way it was. It's a little, they're not dumping it all on us, all at once, but again, the accepted history is that Jon Snow is a bastard, and that Rhaegar raped Lyanna, but that's not the case. That is arguably not the case. That again, the theory goes that they were actually in love, and Jon Snow was their child, and we cut away before we get to see that after the awesome Sword of the Morning dude gets stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
Sucky move.
Max von Sydow
Ned's...
making us have to wait other episodes to figure things out.
I'm not. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that they're pacing these things out really well, giving us bits and pieces as we need them. As long as they're not going to make us wait like till the end of the season to find that out. And even then, and depending how they do it, I could still handle it.
Yeah, I was looking up to see who plays young Ned, and I've never seen him in anything else. He doesn't even have that many. This is his first finished TV spot, and it was on Game of Thrones. So that's not a bad place to start your career.
It's not bad, but I was not blown away with his acting.
Yeah, neither was I.
So if they're going to do a prequel series, I'm kind of like, we'll accept some recasting. Maybe the guy's amazing. Okay, maybe he is. I don't know. But if he's not, I hope they're flexible. And we know that they are flexible enough to let somebody else in.
They've
I didn't see
people
enough of him
mid-season before. However, I would be fine if they kept Luke Roberts to play Arthur Dane, because he was pretty cool in that little tiny bit we got to see.
Yes, and I mean, I was reading some comments a little bit right before we recorded. You don't get to see very often a really great many versus one fight scene. Like most of the time, they resort to, like people coming at the guy one at a time, and he fights them off one at a time. And to see him sort of parry all these guys at once, he has two swords, and being able to sort of get them off balance in a rhythm where he could handle one at a time, but in a believable way, was just really, really effective choreography.
Yeah, it definitely was, and that's really hard to pull off. Like, anytime you're fighting multiple people, even if you have good swords and everything, like it's almost impossible to really keep focus on so many people coming at you. And he started, I think there was at least 5 to 7 people standing whenever that full-on sequence happened, and he was just using them against each other. That's the only way you can really get out of that, is too many people crowding around, you take somebody's throat out, and then all of a sudden there's 4, and then all of a sudden there's 1.
Well, right, and the great thing about that is by the time you get to the end, you're like, it's only Ned Stark left. This guy's 4 against 1, and he's beaten the other 3, and you're thinking, okay, how good is Ned Stark at this point? And he's not that good. And
we only got to see him really fight a couple times in the entire series. Like Ned Stark fought against Jaime outside of the Littlefinger's whorehouse once. We didn't really get to see him in any sort of combat very often.
It's also neat to see him as a young guy who's not solemn, not fully formed, not this wise old sort of stay of the series that he had to get there. He was a young brash dude once who, charging in and being foolish and making bold, statements that he couldn't necessarily back up.
Yeah, like whenever he's talking smack about being at the Trident and everything. That's a battle I wish I could see sometime. I'm sure if they brought up like Robert's Rebellion, it would be like the main battle, and it would be a Black Watch type episode. But I've been reading a little bit about that on the wikis.
That's one of those that you talked about them making a movie or a prequel series. Like, I would love to see the prequel to Game of Thrones as a movie.
Yeah, you could probably get it done in one good long movie. Like I'd prefer to have like a one season thing, but who knows where they'll land on all that.
The other important thing we need to talk about in this scene, by the way, is that Bran speaks to his father, and his father hears something.
Yeah,
And
he stops on the stairs to look back at his son.
you can tell that the three-eyed raven guy gets kind of freaked out by this. Like, I don't think he's surprised. I think he knows that it's possible, but I also think he's in a position where he's thinking, dude, you want to not maybe... He's worried about Bran getting this power too early, or using it before he's learned the full consequences.
Yeah, trying to go back and change timelines or something.
Right, and he tells him the past is written, the ink is dry, you can't change it. But Bran is not to the point where he's going to necessarily be willing to take that as gospel.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I don't think so either. And if he has that power, that's pretty incredible. I don't know what he would first go back and do. Like
I don't know.
Maybe save his
he
legs.
would probably try to save his dad.
Yeah,
or talk to his dad. At the very least, just like have a conversation with him.
Yeah. I bet he could get that far, but there's probably not much else he's going to be able to do without undoing everything that ever happened. Because all he'd have to do is distract him so he wouldn't climb the tower, because that's where everything started, just getting pushed out.
That's true. If he could go back and talk to himself,
Just
that
like
would be an interesting scene
throw
to
a
see.
rock at himself.
I don't think he can physically affect it. I don't think that's something that he can do. It'd be interesting to see if like he tries to change that and it ends up causing it. Like him saying something is like what accidentally got their attention or whatever.
So you get like a Cassandra Truth situation.
I think so. Where a sort of a closed loop time travel deal. I don't know. We haven't seen him actually try to change anything, and I don't know how that's going to work. But that's exciting going forward. And speaking of going forward, we've got Khaleesi in the Dothraki city, the sort of place where they send their widows. And there's not much to this scene other than we just find out that she might be in hotter water than we originally even thought, because she could have gone here initially after Khal Drogo died and just lived out her days with the other widows. But since she went off and did her own thing, now they're going to have to make some kind of a choice. The council's got to come together and decide what to do with her.
Yeah, the best she can hope for is basically being isolated with the rest of the women until she dies.
Yes, which, you have... Where's Drogon for all of this?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't... Please understand, I don't want him to swoop in and save her every time. Like, that's going to get to be a boring storytelling thing, but what is that dude's problem? He flies her away, and they hang out, and all of a sudden she gets captured, and he's just like, well, I don't know where she went. Well, off to killing more kids.
In the post-episode thing, like, they showed that Jorah's probably going to be the one running in there to save her and everything.
Even him, I don't... It's interesting to have those moments where somebody saves her. I would really love for her to be able to think her own way out of this one somehow. Or, to use her, she's whatever, inflammability in some way to sort of dazzle them and make them think that she's something special and get all of the Dothraki on her side.
Yeah.
Like, that would be cool, because...
Or they sentence her to be being burned at the stake, and then they deify her.
If that happened, I could see that happening. I could see that being a really interesting way to go. This is all speculation, obviously, but thinking about what's going to happen going forward, she still needs an army. And while the Unsullied are great and the dragons are great, she was always planning, the whole original plan initially was for her to have Khal Drogo's people. If she can find a way to unite all the Dothraki, if she comes out and they're all like, okay, this woman is something else, and they decide to follow her, that could be a really interesting way for her to go.
That would be. And it would be the thing where she earned her army again, because a lot of people were saying the reason why she couldn't have Khal Drogo's is because it would be her army, it'd be his, and all these other little stipulations for the character on why she had to go get her own army. It'll be interesting to see where they're going with that. Speaking of building armies, the next scene I think would be with Ramsay.
No, we're back with Marine first, with Varys questioning
Yes.
the killer of the Unsullied, the prostitute. Which, speaking of building armies, I think that is something that could come into play, because first of all, great scene where she's like, "You can torture me, I'm not going to say anything," and he says, "I don't torture people, I make them happy," which. And he does. He says, "Listen, you know what? I'll give you safe passage out of here. Here's a giant bag of silver. All you have to do is tell me who was behind this. That's it."
I love the way he phrased it too. He's like, "We'll have to get one of those leather-clad fellows back up here because I can't even carry this."
he's so glib. He knows how good he is, and he knows how people work, and it's true. He employs that old catchphrase or whatever. He says, "You can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar," and he lays the honey on thick. He says, "Listen, I understand your point of view," and she makes some good points. She's very, she sounds very revolutionary and very, patriotic. She says, "Listen, you guys came and invaded our city. That's not cool, dude."
And he breaks it down to perspectives. Like he's trying to say, like, this is who we are. This is why we came here. And it's just one of the more effective scenes. It's the first time we've gotten to see Varys kind of doing his thing this season. He's talked a little bit. He's done stuff with Tyrion. But this was his first real deal-making and getting to see the diplomacy in action.
But we do find out who is behind it. It's actually the rulers of the several cities around them who, I think understandably so, are nervous about what happens if Khaleesi gets the power that she's seeking.
Not to mention she overthrew some of them in the first place, so it just makes sense that they're trying to undermine her.
Yes, and it's interesting. We get a little scene with Tyrion here. I think this is another one of those scenes that doesn't really amount to much. He's just sort of goading, not Wormtongue. What's his name? Grey Worm and the other handmaid, and like it's so awkward, and you can tell that they're used to being kind of service people, and he's used to having witty banter with very smart people, and they're looking at him like, "What are you doing? Why are you talking to us?" Like, we say what we think. When Khaleesi needs advice, we give it, and we'll give our reports, but we don't talk, dude. But it doesn't contribute much, I think, to the larger plot. It's just giving us a little, I think, enough Peter Dinklage to sort of whet our appetite, since he doesn't have much to do in this episode.
Yeah, he's been a little bit absent. Like in that first episode, he was talking a little bit about like what needs to happen to get Marine back, who might have taken her, like just all the different revolutionary stuff. And I guess he did have his dragon moment last episode.
Yeah, the last episode was big, and it's fine that he doesn't have a ton to do here, but it does, the gears kind of mesh together if Khaleesi can get something going with the Dothraki. The thing that they come down on it over here is that, hey, we don't have enough people to both go after these guys who are coming after us and keep the peace here in Marine. And that Tyrion, Grey Worm is just like, "Hey, we got to go after these guys." The only thing they understand is violence, and Tyrion's he doesn't have a witty, snappy, like, "No, we need to do this" kind of response, but he does have a lot of reservations. He's much less likely to just jump into a fight that he knows they might not be able to win. He's trying to think his way around, how they can get out of this without necessarily using the armies.
Yeah.
But we do move on then to King's Landing, where we get the not exactly a maester anymore.
I keep getting these scenes.
Ex-maester.
I need to let you introduce what we're talking about because I'm like one scene ahead.
Where with Qyburn with the little birds.
Yeah.
Where we do, it's kind of an interesting transition because Varys in the previous season is talking about his little birds, and it's something he's always talked about, and we've never got a specific answer of who that is. But we do get a little clue and sort of foreshadowing when he's talking to the woman. He says children are not unsullied, but something like that, where he's like, "I don't hurt kids. That don't like," because he's talking to her about her son, and she takes it as a threat, and he says, "I don't do that. I'm just saying if you die, which you will if the sentence is carried out, your son will be in a bad way." And he's had his little birds, and now we see Qyburn here talking to these kids, and offering them sweets, and I was half expecting the sweets to be poisoned because I'm
he's
sort
like
of expect everybody to be Ramsay at this point.
He's a crazy Meister too. Like he's the one that brought the mountain back to his current state of being Franken Mountain. He seems like the type of guy who wouldn't be opposed to poisoning kids if it forwarded his gains, but it seems like he's got a lot more intentions for them to be just information gatherers.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, are they actually loyal to? So he gives them the candy, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, we'll do what you want." And until in the scene, I just thought, "Wow, this guy's absolutely flipped pretty quick." And what can you expect from kids? There's a part of me that wonders. I wonder if Varys, knowing these guys would be found out, and when he left them behind, kind of left them instructions like, "Hey, you can give them some information about me, but maybe don't tell them this or that," or sort of letting them be half double agents.
I wouldn't be surprised. It seems like something that he would have the forethought to do. Although he's
always several steps ahead.
He had to get out of there a little bit faster than he was comfortable with, though.
Yeah, but even then, I think maybe he would have had some fail-safes in place, like, if I'm gone, here's where the food is, and I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, he's got this network of kids everywhere. His little birds are not just in King's Landing. He clearly has this network of child spies all over, the kingdom, and so he's in communication with them somehow. They're getting things back to him. They're running, or traveling or somehow. And I don't know how all that works, and I don't need to have a specific breakdown of how it works, but I'm just saying initially I just took the scene at face value, and now I kind of wonder if there might be something a little bit more there.
Yeah, could be interesting. Also, like the amount of information they would have on him now seems like it would be pretty negligible anyway.
That's true.
Other than other contacts he might have on this side of of Westeros.
We get a little bit of not the queen. I'm sorry. They make a point of that.
Yes.
Of Cersei and the mountain, former mountain, and Jaime going into the small council and kind of trying to, work something out. And we get a little bit of Marjorie's grandma, which again is one of those things where I would have liked some more. Hopefully, she'll be in going forward. But those people are not playing ball with them.
Yeah,
at
the
this point.
the Tyrells are just basically done with the Lannister crap, especially from Cersei.
Well, even their own maester, right? Like he's like that giant tall guy. The mountain that he brought back is not okay. We need to put that dude down. And sort of saying it as they're walking into the room, like you're dumb. Why?
That dude seems like he would have a target on his back just from all the just the various things we've seen from him. I'm surprised he's still alive.
What use is he even to anyone at this point? Like seriously, he thinks more of himself than Cersei thinks of herself, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, I guess he's just a bureaucrat. They're like cockroaches. They just stick around.
You can't get rid of them.
Yeah.
Well, you can in Game of Thrones. People, it's not like in your IBM company or something where even there. I wonder how many people have poisoned other people to get a promotion. That's got to have happened, right?
Oh yeah, I'm sure
that's nothing to do with Game of Thrones.
It's probably a lot more often than you would expect. Like if you looked at the statistics.
The statistics of CEOs who are battling it out.
Yes.
Nothing
like,
to do with Game of Thrones.
Like someone just finds little radioactive element, puts it in their desk. Just he somehow got testicular cancer. Look at that.
In his chair.
Yeah.
Radio. He's like rot his balls off. Okay, Game of Thrones. Moving forward with the young king kind of following through on what he said he was going to do. He goes to see the High Sparrow. He has a bunch of people with him. He's got. He doesn't have the mountain with him. He just takes the King's Guard. And I was, kind of halfway expecting this to be something violent. Again, Game of Thrones. Sometimes it seems predictable, and sometimes it's like, oh, wait, this does not go the way I thought it was, because the High Sparrow, he seems kind of treacherous in this.
Yeah.
He seems like, man, that guy could just stab this kid. And, the High Sparrow dismisses his guards, and the king kind of, sort of just follows along, and he's like, well, I guess you guys can go back too now.
Yeah,
they don't leave the room.
He lets people dictate the situation a little bit too much.
But I really loved that, the High Sparrow just talks to him, and not like in a here's what you need to do way, or he he talks to him about his mom and says, hey, says stuff again. The High Sparrow's greatest ammunition is the truth. Even though sometimes I think he has more up his sleeve than he's letting on, every time that he is in a situation like this, he uses the truth to his advantage. And here, he points out to, not Tommen, or it is Tommen, right?
Yeah, Tommen.
Tommen, he points out to him, like, hey, your mom has done some bad stuff, okay? And the gods aren't necessarily going to turn the other way, but, one of the 7 is the mother, and he says to him, listen, when she talks about you, she's legit serious, like, radiating the mother's love, and that's something that matters, and it's true. Like, that is what drives Cersei. That is the thing that gives her soul its entire purpose.
Yeah, and it was sort of the same with Marcella, like, not so much with Joffrey. I think she knew something was just wrong with Joffrey, but
she still loved him.
Yeah, she still protected him whenever she could. It's like the only thing it's the only redeeming quality about Cersei, really.
Yeah, and for him to use that, and not to be like, hey, you need to, go away, but just to sort of get down on Tommen's level and talk to him. It's fascinating to me that the High Sparrow has that level of, he's manipulating, but not really. Like, he's just talking to this kid and saying, okay, hey, you're here to, yell at me and sort of demand things, and here's how I feel about stuff. This is what the gods demand, and you would do well to surround yourself with wise people. And who's wiser than the gods? And Tommen says, well, my dad or my granddad told me that, but he didn't say that part about the gods. And he connects with him. That's such a powerful thing that this guy gets into. I say gets into his head. I'm making it sound more nefarious than I mean to it. He just talks to him and just makes a connection, and how powerful that can be.
I still think it was a little bit of a nefarious connection. He's still manipulating him, but he's just very, very, very good at making it not seem that way.
Maybe I cannot fully convince myself that this guy is, it has like this black heart. I keep coming around to wanting to believe that, and maybe he'll give us reason to, but we haven't seen anything yet that would say that he believes anything other than exactly what he says he believes.
Yeah.
So we'll have to go, find out going forward. I don't have any idea, but he kind of diffuses the situation there in a brilliant way. And we move on forward to Arya, still in the House of Black and White. Now she's no longer a beggar. Now she's basically being, not tortured exactly, but put through the ringer by the girl.
Just beat a lot. Lots of concussions, lots of head trauma.
And this is where I'm kind of glad I'm watching the TV show and not reading the book, because I guarantee you this would take up like 8 chapters in the book. Like, they would go into great detail of exactly how this training went, exactly what she's going through, and how many months or years this is taking. And in the show, it's just a montage, and I'm so thankful for that.
I mean, like, that saves how much in production and everything else just to have a quick montage. So well, I'm glad it was there sense. Too.
Right? You don't need to keep coming back to this, belaboring the points. It kind of works in the books. It's nice to have the details, but man, is it great to just see, like, yep, they beat her up. Yeah, she does seem to actually be serious about this a girl has no name thing.
I did not expect her to get her sight back so soon.
That may be a little bit fast, but again, having read the books and knowing how long things take, I'm just like, yes, finally. We don't have to wait around for all this stuff to happen. And I think this is another one of those things where you can't exactly know what's in somebody's heart, but I really think she's starting to actually take this idea of being no one, at least on as much on the surface as she can. I don't... she talks about the people that she wanted to get revenge on. Who did she leave off the list? Because there was somebody she didn't mention.
She definitely left off the Hound at first, and they asked her about that. But
I thought there was somebody else when she listed them off, and I can't remember for the life of me who it was.
It might have been somebody that she knew was dead. Like, okay. Maybe Tywin or something like that.
Or the guy that she killed last season.
Yeah.
Wasn't that one of the people on her list?
Yeah, the head of the Kingsguard. I can't remember his name.
Okay. Then that would explain why she didn't list him. but they know when she's lying, or at least when she's knowingly lying, and they're kind of beating that out of her. I don't think Arya is completely gone under the surface, but she is learning to hide who she is, and maybe that's the point of this. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe they're just trying to wash away all of every affectation that would give her away as Arya. If you want to be a faceless man, you have to sort of get rid of your old face.
It could be. I haven't been able to tell if that's like a supernatural thing where they literally just stop becoming the people they were.
I think I think that's what it is. But we don't, that's not a long scene, but we do see her getting better, at fighting the other girl there. And I don't know exactly what she was doing with the powders. I don't know what the point of that was to signify. But there were several scenes where she's putting powders and stuff, and I was like, is that showing her scent, like learning things?
And that's kind of what I figured, is that she was learning to function as a blind person. Kind of, she stopped fighting that.
But to wrap things up for us, we finally get back to the north with Ramsay, and he's talking over with his new sort of householders. Is that what they're called? The people, his bannermen, I guess, the guys who are swearing allegiance to him in the north, and they're all a bunch of young guys. It's really interesting to me that he has a bunch of sort of upstarts around him that are kind of his mind.
Yeah, because you've got Smallgen. I'm not sure if that's how you actually say it. Smallgen Umber, and he was talking about like how if he would have been in that situation, he might have killed his father too. And he's just not having this whole like, oh, my father's enemies poisoned him and all this. He's just like, nope, your father was a cunt.
Well, and he refuses to bow too. He's like, yeah, I'm not doing that. We're gonna be together, and I ain't doing this tradition thing. And Ramsay lets it slide.
Oh, that's because he brought him a gift.
Which, yeah, man,
it's bad times.
Why would you? This is sometimes I understand why Game of Thrones does the thing it does, right? So some people were complaining last week about how cruel it was that we see Ramsay murder that baby, and I understand, sort of that mindset where sometimes it seems like there's just a violence for violence sakes. But in that case, I could argue, okay, the story needs to have that happen. There's no way, like, he's not just going to kill his dad for no reason. The reason that he's going to kill his dad is because she had a son. That's what sets him off. And then after he kills his dad, he can't have the son sticking around because that would still be a threat to his a succession, so he needs to get rid of them too. It makes sense from his point of view, and
it's all
there's
about
not really another way to do the story with that.
Yeah, he had to be the legitimate heir to House Bolton.
But here it just feels like, oh, by the way, we're going to have Ramsay do more douchebaggery things and kill more people who are, I mean, granted, Rickon's older now, so he doesn't look like a little boy, but it's still like, this is the little kid, the youngest Stark. There's no way, I say no way. I mean, Jon Snow did leave the Night's Watch. I mean, we talked about that. Maybe he shows up.
I figured that's the reason why they have this, is that it would expedite him, because I know Jon Snow's going to be wandering, and the wildlings are going to think that he's a god and all this other stuff, and that they're going to want to follow him. He's going to be like, no, I can't do that. That's an old life. I'm not going to be like that guy anymore. And then he's going to hear that Asha and Rickon are in the hands of Bolton, and he's going to be the one that has to charge in and take down Winterfell and save them. I think it's just a way to... What's that?
I said, poor Shaggy Dog.
Yeah, I was sad about that too. All those direwolves are dying off.
Well, Jon still has his, and we mentioned last episode, Arya technically somewhere still has hers, although she's off in the woods somewhere.
And they're both lost.
But it's, if that does bring Jon Snow in, I'll accept it as a legitimate storytelling thing, but there is a part of me that thinks, I'm here to see the fights, and, I'm okay with seeing some blood, but I don't need it to be gratuitous. I don't need you to bring people in like Rickon just to kill them off. Yeah. It needs to serve some kind of purpose.
I could also see Asha being the one to kill Ramsay, but I don't think it's going to be that. Because she was the one that kind of was able to take Theon and get him off of his guard to let them escape before. So she's pretty wily about these sorts of things.
Yeah. I'm not like giving up on the show or anything, but I do think some of the criticisms of hey, sometimes we just do violence for violence's sake are merited, and especially it's when it's not, when they're just doing it to be cruel, but it seems like it's not cool. It's just cruelness.
Yeah,
like it's not like these are warriors fighting it out. You know, like the thing at the Tower of Joy when they're fighting those guys and those guys die. I'm not like, man, you know, why? Like those are soldiers, all right. They kind of knew what they were getting into. Doesn't affect me that much. If you're gonna kill Rickon though, that's just that's sick.
Yeah,
like
you gotta be careful about how you do that. It can't just be for nothing.
Yeah, and I mean, killing the baby. While it wasn't a fun scene, I didn't love it. I could understand the necessity of it in the story, because if it didn't, it just would be like a complete betrayal of that character. There's no way he's gonna let those people live. But here, you've brought this kid in when nobody needed him to come back. I mean, from the viewer's perspective, it's not like we were all clamoring for Rickon to come back. If you're just bringing him in to throw a curveball and be like, yeah, we're gonna be mean to another Stark, I've got some problems with that.
Yeah, it's just too much bad stuff has happened to the Stark family already. They just can't catch a break.
So that's it. That's everything for this episode of Game of Thrones. We already talked about the very ending scene. You know, Jon Snow goes off on his own. We don't know what's going to happen to him. Any new predictions going forward? Do you feel anything shifting now that you've got more information, Tony, on what you think is going to happen next?
I think a lot of the predictions that we've made are coming to fruition, especially as far as Jon goes, the Tower of Joy, all that. So I don't really have anything new. Other than, I would say, by episode 6, I think Daenerys will be free again. And maybe we'll see the end of Bolton by the end of the season, but he might survive just because they need a bad guy up in the north. It's really hard to tell. I think,
man, I mean, we're in season 6. They're going 8 seasons, right?
They're going to
have 2 more half seasons?
I thought they were just going to 7. They might be going to 8.
I thought they said they were doing like 2 more seasons, but they were shorter seasons. They're gonna be like 6 episodes or something. But we got to be getting close to the White Walkers coming to the Wall.
Yeah, and we've got to be close to Daenerys actually getting to the same continent.
That's another. I think definitely by the end of this season, we have Daenerys in. I forget what the name of the main continent is, but you know where King's Landing and all that stuff is. I think. Westeros, thank you. I think we get Daenerys in Westeros by the end of the season with some kind of army, because that kind of happens in the books as well. Not exactly, but I think Ramsay gets dead. I think Jon Snow ends up in Winterfell with the wildlings, and I think that we sort of start to see the White Walkers at the Wall. If they're not over the Wall at the end of the season, I really think that that battle is very imminent, and because that's the bad guy that we need to be focusing on going forward. Yeah. Like as deplorable as Ramsay is, he's kind of a peanut.
He's not an existential threat to humankind in Westeros.
Yeah, he's just a giant dick.
Yeah,
which apparently Jon Snow doesn't have, by the way.
Oh, Tormund. I've always liked that character.
It was such a great line, too. One of the comments I read in one of the Reddit threads was like, man, Jon Snow really took that small penis comment to heart. I'm out of here, guys. Screw you and your wall.
Any other predictions for you?
I think that's it, man. I think, then these are sort of longer terms. I don't know what we see next episode yet, other than what we saw. I think that we get definitely a lot more movement on the Khaleesi plots. But it is interesting to me that in at least 2 of these episodes, we've started and ended at the Wall. But that's sort of where I'm basing my, the White Walkers are coming and they're going to be a big deal in this. That the stuff that's happening at the Wall is very important, not just because of Jon Snow, but I think because that is where the focal point of the real battle is going to be.
Yeah. And I think I agree with you on that. Just to let you guys know, if you go to humanechoes.com, we got a bunch of other really cool stuff going on. We've got our standard podcast where we just reviewed Sharknado 3. The week before that, we did Look Who's Back. We review a new movie every week. If you subscribe to this for just the audio portion, you'll also get the standard podcast, along with our bonus stuff like Captain America Civil War and some of the other fun stuff we've been doing. So go to
Speaking of the regular podcast, I got to say, You haven't seen the movie for this week yet, have you, Tony?
No, Birdemic.
Tony has to watch Birdemic. I've already seen it, and I'm just so excited to hear what you think about this movie, Tony.
It's gonna be bad. It's gonna be really
bad. Hanging out with the family.
This is gonna be really bad tomorrow.
The musical number is the best part of this movie, Tony. It's the best part.
For those of you who don't know, I am not a fan of musicals. That's why I watch Game of Thrones, because they'll never make that a musical. But anyway, I hope you guys have an awesome week. We will be back with episode 4 next week, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.